everyone, and welcome back to Dark Deeds and Conspiracy Podcast, the show where we dive into the stories that keep you up at night and debate whether they're actually supernatural or just misunderstood.
I'm Alex, your friendly neighborhood skeptic, here to bring a flashlight into the dark corners of the internet's favorite rabbit holes.
And I'm Jordan, the one who sometimes wonders if there's more going on than meets the eye. Today we're exploring one of the most talked about modern mysteries on the internet, the case of Elisa Lam.
A tragic case, no doubt, but also one that's been buried under a mountain of online conspiracy theories, ghost stories, and Reddit threads with more speculation than fact.
Elisa was a 21-year-old college student from Canada who went missing while staying at the infamous Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. Weeks later, her body was found in one of the building's rooftop water tanks after hotel guests had been complaining about the taste and color of their tap water.
Which is horrifying enough on its own, no ghosts needed.
But what really sent the internet into a spiral was the elevator surveillance footage released by LAPD. A now viral clip showing Elisa behaving erratically, pressing multiple buttons, hiding in the corner, making strange hand gestures, almost like she was interacting with something we can't see.
Or she was having a mental health crisis, which is the official explanation. But hey, I'm sure this won't be the only time we disagree today.
Definitely not. We'll be digging into the case details, the theories, from the plausible to the paranormal, and breaking down what makes this case still so haunting over a decade later.
So grab your water bottles, sealed preferably, and stay tuned as we explore the mystery of Elisa Lam.
Elisa Lam was a 21-year-old Canadian student from Vancouver, enrolled at the University of British Columbia. In January 2013, she set out on a solo trip along the west coast of the United States. She kept a Tumblr blog at the time, very open, very personal, where she documented her thoughts, her struggles with mental health, and her excitement about seeing the world. Her last stop before she was supposed to head to Santa Cruz was Los Angeles. She checked into the Cecil Hotel on January 28th.
And this is where things start to get strange. The Cecil Hotel already had a reputation, and not a good one. It's in downtown LA, near Skid Row, and it's been associated with multiple deaths, overdoses, and even serial killers. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, stayed there in the 1980s. There's a whole laundry list of tragedies. But Elisa wouldn't necessarily have known that. She was originally assigned to a shared room, like a hostel setup, but was later moved to a private room after her roommates complained about her strange behavior.
And that's one of the first red flags. According to hotel staff and some of the other guests, Elisa was acting erratically, leaving unsettling notes on other people's beds, locking doors behind her, just odd behavior. But it wasn't until February 1st that her family grew concerned. They hadn't heard from her, and Elisa had been calling home every day. She missed her scheduled checkout that day, and her parents called the LAPD.
Police investigated, but at first nothing turned up. They searched the hotel, including parts of the rooftop with dogs, but they didn't find her. Fires went up and social media got involved, but things didn't really explode until the LAPD released surveillance footage from an elevator inside the hotel.
And that's the famous elevator video. If you've seen it, you know. It's unsettling. Elisa enters the elevator, presses multiple buttons, like all the ones on the column, and then steps back like she's waiting. But the doors don't close. Then she peeks out into the hallway like she's looking for someone or something. She darts back in, she steps out again, she moves her hands in these weird flowing patterns, almost like she's swimming in the air. Then she walks away and the doors close.
The internet lost its mind. Within days, there were conspiracy theories. People said the video looked manipulated. Now the timestamp was blurred, that footage was missing. People wondered if she was being chased, or if she was playing the elevator game, some urban legend ritual that allegedly takes you to another dimension. But there was no one visible in the video, just Elisa.
19 days after she was last seen, hotel guests started complaining about the water. Low pressure, weird taste, black color. And on February 19th, a hotel maintenance worker checked the rooftop water tanks and found her body inside one of them, naked, with her clothes and belongings floating nearby.
Now this is important. The tanks were supposed to be inaccessible. You had to go up to the roof, past loft doors and alarms. You had to climb a ladder, lift a heavy lid. People question how she got in there, and why. The autopsy ruled her death as accidental drowning. No signs of trauma, no drugs or alcohol in her system, just some of her prescription meds for bipolar disorder. And notably, she had not taken all of her prescribed doses.
And that's the official story. But that hasn't stopped people from digging deeper, from believing something else happened, whether it was foul play, a cover-up, the influence of something paranormal, or just a young woman in crisis alone in a city, in a place with a dark history. That's what we're here to talk about today. The elevator footage is what turned this case from a local tragedy into an international mystery. It's grainy, the timestamp is blurred, and there's no audio, but Elisa's behavior is just strange. It was recorded on February 1st, the day she disappeared. She steps into the elevator, wearing a red hoodie and black shorts, presses multiple buttons, then steps back like she was expecting it to move.
But the elevator doesn't move, and that's already weird. Normally it would close in a few seconds, but this door stayed open for what feels like an eternity. Some people think that the footage was edited, either slowed down or intentionally trimmed, though the LAPD never confirmed that.
What's so unsettling is her body language. At one point, she presses herself into the corner of the elevator like she's hiding. She peeks out of the elevator multiple times like she's watching for someone and then darts back in. Later, she steps out into the hallway, moves in these slow sweeping motions with her hands. It almost looks like she's interacting with someone, or something, just out of frame.
Or, more likely, she's having a psychotic episode. This kind of behavior isn't uncommon during episodes of mania or schizophrenia. Elisa had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and we know from the toxicology report that she had not taken all of her prescribed medication. That can cause delusions, paranoia, disorganized thinking, even hallucinations. It's tragic, but it doesn't mean she was being chased by a ghost.
But the thing is, people still question how she got up to the roof in the first place. There were locked doors with alarms. Only staff should have had access. The hotel claims that the alarms would have gone off if someone unauthorized had tried to use them. So how did Elisa get up there without anyone noticing?
Here's the thing. Those alarm systems weren't exactly Fort Knox. If a maintenance worker had recently been up there and forgot to relock something, or if one of the side stairwells wasn't armed, it's plausible she found her way up. The Cecil Hotel was notoriously run down. There were reports of broken locks and lax security for years. You can't assume that just because a door should have been locked, it was.
But even assuming she got up there on her own, how did she get inside the water tank? Those tanks are tall, industrial style, heavy metal lids. They're not easy to lift. She wasn't a big person. The maintenance guy who found her said he had to climb a ladder and open the lid just to look inside. The idea of her lifting that alone, climbing in and then closing it behind her, it's hard to picture.
The lid was actually found open when she was discovered, which gets lost in some of the early reports. People claimed it was closed, and that sparked theories of how no one could have closed it from the inside. But later interviews suggest the lid was open, which would line up with the idea that she climbed in and couldn't get out. Those tanks are slippery, steep, and there's nothing to grip inside. Once you're in, you're trapped.
Even so, something about the elevator video doesn't sit right with people. The way she moves, the long delay, the framing, it doesn't feel like something you can fully explain away. It's become this iconic clip in internet lore. People say it's like watching someone slip into another dimension.
Or like watching someone slowly unravel in real time. And that's what makes it hard. People don't want to accept that the footage might just be a woman in crisis. That it's uncomfortable because it's real, not because it's supernatural. A lot of times people add mystery to tragedy because the reality is too upsetting or mundane to face.
That's fair, but I also think when people feel like the official story has gaps, like edited footage, vague answers from the hotel, or inconsistencies in the timeline, they start looking for alternative explanations. Not always paranormal, but maybe something more intentional, like someone was hiding something.
Sure, and that's valid, but we have to be careful about the leap between "this feels weird" and "someone must have done something." What we see in the video is undeniably unsettling, but that doesn't mean it's evidence of a cover-up. It could be human error or poor management, or a mental health emergency, or all of the above.
So whether you see the elevator video as a creepy, unsolved mystery or a heartbreaking moment caught on camera, there's no denying its impact. It's what turned Elisa's story into a viral sensation, one that still gets debated to this day.
Yeah, and whether you believe the theories or not, it's a piece of footage that's hard to forget once you've seen it.
And speaking of theories, let's get into them. From the plausible to the paranormal, we're diving into everything people think could have really happened to Elisa Lam. So, some of these theories are wild, some are rooted in skepticism, and others walk that line. But let's start with the one that caught fire early on, the paranormal theory. So many people point to the history of the Cecil Hotel itself. This place is like a magnet for tragedy, between the suicides, overdoses, murders, and connections to serial killers like Richard Ramirez and Jack Unterweger. It feels like the place is cursed. It's been nicknamed Hotel Death for a reason. Some think Elisa fell victim to the energy of the place, something supernatural feeding off vulnerable people. Maybe even something malevolent attached itself to her.
The Cecil's history is definitely dark, but we can't ignore the hotel's location. It's in downtown LA, right by Skid Row, and it was cheap, poorly managed, and home to a lot of transient populations over the years. If you stick a hotel in the middle of a struggling neighborhood and leave it undersecured for decades, bad things are going to happen. It doesn't need to be haunted to explain a high number of deaths.
Sure, but some people believe it's not just the people, it's the building itself. It's like traps tragedy. Elisa's behavior in the elevator, the water tank, the eeriness of how it all played out, it hits the beats of a ghost story whether you believe in spirits or not.
Or it's a tragic death in a rundown motel with a sensational history. The setting fuels the story, but it doesn't necessarily cause the outcome.
Okay, let's go a little deeper into supernatural with another theory, that Elisa was either possessed or influenced by something not human. People say her movements in the elevator are unnatural, the way she waves her arms, almost like she's in a trance. Some believe she's communicating with an unseen entity, maybe under its control. Others say her death lines up with demonic folklore, like being drawn into water or mimicking patterns of spiritual oppression.
I get the vibe people are picking up on. It's definitely unsettling to watch. But if you look at it through a psychological lens, it fits known behaviors. Her gestures could be signs of disorganized thinking, or she could be experiencing hallucinations. People in the middle of manic episodes can act in ways that seem completely foreign to outsiders. You don't need demonic influence to explain erratic behavior if her mental health was deteriorating.
But what about the timing? Elisa had traveled alone, stayed at a haunted hotel, was showing odd behavior, and then ended up dead in a place that no one could explain. It almost feels ritualistic, like she was led there by something she couldn't fight.
Or like she was alone, unmedicated, and in the middle of a breakdown. That explanation might not be spooky, but it's grounded in reality, and supported by her own blog posts and her medication history.
Alright, so now let's move into a theory that doesn't involve the supernatural, the murder or cover-up angle. Some people believe Elisa didn't end up in that tank on her own. They say the hotel or someone connected to it covered up a crime. Maybe she was attacked, and her death was staged to look accidental. Some even claim there's missing footage from the elevator video where the someone's edited out of the frame.
This is the theory I hear the most, and I get why it appeals to people. The idea that the hotel or police were hiding something is compelling. But the autopsy showed no signs of trauma, no bruises, no wounds, no signs of sexual assault, and her clothes were found in the tank with her, consistent with hypothermia-related disrobing. There was also no evidence of foul play. No fingerprints, no DNA, no sign that anyone else was involved.
But there were inconsistencies. The toxicology report was delayed. The hotel wasn't exactly cooperative. The people still question how Elisa, who wasn't very tall or very strong, got up onto the roof and into the tank by herself. And if the lid was open, why didn't police find her when they searched that roof earlier?
I'll admit that the initial investigation wasn't perfect, but that doesn't mean that there was a cover-up. Human error, poor training, maybe even negligence. Those are more likely than a full-blown conspiracy, and Elisa had a history of wandering off during episodes. Her behavior in the days before her disappearance fits that pattern.
Okay, and now for the internet's favorite rabbit hole, the elevator game and government environment theories. So the elevator game is an urban legend where you press a sequence of buttons in a specific order that supposedly travel to another dimension. A lot of people noticed that Elisa's button pressing in the elevator looked eerily similar to that game. Others tie her death to theories about bioweapon testing or mind control experiments, especially since there was a tuberculosis outbreak in the area around the same time, and the test used to screen for TV was literally the Lam-Elisa test.
That part, the Lam-Elisa thing, it's such a wild coincidence it almost feels fake. But I've looked into it. The test was actually named long before Elisa was born. It's an acronym for lipo-arabinomannan, enzyme-linked immunosorbent arse. The had absolutely no connection to her. It's just a weird, creepy overlap that the internet latched onto.
But coincidences that specific fuel conspiracy theories for a reason. The elevator game theory might be a stretch, but it adds this eerie symbolic layer that keeps people coming back. It's not about logic, it's about how strange the story feels, how many little details seem just slightly off.
I think that's the core of it. We don't like ambiguity, especially in a death that feels so incomplete. So we fill in the blanks with games, symbols, experiments, demons, whatever makes the story feel whole. But that doesn't make it true. The more plausible answer is still the simplest. She suffered a mental health crisis in a place that wasn't safe or equipped to help her.
But maybe it's that tension between known and unknown that keeps people obsessed with this case. There's enough evidence to support a rational explanation, but just enough mystery to keep the door open for everything else.
That's fair. It's a story built on shadows, but that doesn't mean the shadows are hiding anything paranormal. Sometimes they're just dark corners we haven't lit up yet.
Well said. And now that we've covered the theories, let's take a look at the autopsy and official findings. Elisa Lam's body was recovered from the rooftop water tank on February 19th, and the official autopsy was released in June 2013. That's 4 months later, which already raised some eyebrows.
Right, and part of the delay was that the toxicology report was incomplete. Elisa's blood samples had decomposed due to the water exposure and the time she remained undiscovered, which made it harder to draw clear conclusions. But the final report ruled her death an accidental drowning, with bipolar disorder listed as a contributing factor.
Here's what we know for sure. There were no signs of physical trauma. No bruises, no cuts, no signs of sexual assault. Her clothes were floating in the tank, separate from her body, but not torn or bloodied. That led to speculation about hypothermia and something called paradoxal undressing, where people experiencing extreme cold sometimes remove their clothes due to disorientation.
Which fits. The water in those tanks would have been freezing, especially in February, and the climate itself would have been exhausting. Combine that with someone in a manic or a psychotic state, and you get a very real risk of misjudging danger or acting impulsively. There were no drugs or alcohol found in her system beyond her prescription meds, and again, even those. Some of them were at a lower level than expected.
And that's a crucial point. Elisa had been prescribed 4 medications. The coroner found low levels of those in her blood and barely any in her system overall. That suggests she wasn't taking her medication consistently. For someone managing bipolar disorder, that could have had a massive impact on her mental state.
Exactly. When people go off these kinds of meds suddenly, it can lead to severe mood swings, psychosis, paranoia. Everything that we saw in the elevator footage starts to make clinical sense in that context.
But some parts of the autopsy left people uneasy. For one, there was confusion around the state of her body. The original report said there was moderate decomposition, no signs of trauma. But people pointed out inconsistencies in how her death timeline was handled, and even questioned whether the cause of death could be accidental when she was found in such strange locations.
To be fair, those tanks were isolated and sealed off from the public, but not impossible to reach. The coroner was working with a very degraded body, and while it's tragic and bizarre, the findings didn't suggest foul play. And that's important. If she had been murdered, there would likely be some kind of physical indication: blunt force trauma, defensive wounds, internal bleeding, but there was nothing like that.
Still, the autopsy didn't clear up every question. The lack of explanation about how she got into the tank is what keeps us from feeling settled for a lot of people. Combine that with the delay in releasing the report, the vagueness in some of the language, the hotel's history, and people start to fill in the blanks.
Sure, but that's not the autopsy's fault. It did what it could with what it had. Just because the case feels mysterious doesn't mean the science was hiding something. The medical examiner didn't find signs of a struggle, drugs, or injuries. The most plausible explanation, based on the evidence, is that she went up there herself, disoriented and unwell, and accidentally drowned.
So in the end, the autopsy ruled it accidental. But for many people, especially those who follow this case online, that answer does not feel satisfying. Not because the science is wrong, but because the circumstances are so strange. So now that we've talked about the official reports, the theories, and the circumstances of Elisa's death, let's look at what really took this case to another level. The internet. This wasn't just a local news story. It exploded globally, and a huge part of that was the elevator video.
Right. The surveillance footage is what really made this case go viral. It's uncomfortable, it's eerie, and it was shared everywhere without context. The minute it hit platforms like YouTube, Reddit, and Tumblr, people were captivated, and the speculation started instantly.
The video was short, but it became a giant puzzle. People analyzed her every movement, broke down frame-by-frame footage, and created timelines of flowcharts. It became one of those moments where everyone thought they could solve the mystery themselves.
But that's also where things went off the rails. A lot of people online weren't trained in criminology or mental health. They were just true crime fans or casual internet users. And that led to misinformation, false leads, and people getting accused online with zero evidence.
Absolutely. There's a fine line between curiosity and conspiracy. And I think people crossed that line because they were genuinely disturbed. The elevator footage taps into something primal. It feels like you're watching someone in danger and you can't help her. That helplessness turns into obsession.
And then Netflix got involved. Documentaries, YouTube explainers, podcasts, all of it gave new life to this case years later. The 2021 docuseries Crime Scene, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, brought the story to an even bigger audience. But it also highlighted how internet detectives accidentally hurt real people. Remember that metal musician Morbid, who was falsely accused?
Yeah, he had posted some dark content, and people decided he must have been involved. They doxed him, harassed him, and he was completely unrelated to the case. He wasn't even in the country at the time. That part of the documentary was hard to watch. It shows how quickly speculation turns into scapegoating.
It's a cautionary tale about what happens when we blur the line between storytelling and real life. Elisa wasn't a character in a horror movie. She was a 21-year-old woman who struggled with her mental health. But just because the story had those eerie elements, the haunted hotel, the written video, the mysterious ending, people started treating it like entertainment.
And maybe that's the part that stays with people the most. The internet gave Elisa's story global reach, but it also removed her humanity in some ways. We talk about theories, footage, documents, but at the core, this was a real person who is vulnerable and alone, and that gets lost in the noise.
And that's what makes this case so complicated. It's not just about what happened on the roof. It's about how we responded to what happened, how we packaged it, shared it, speculated, and even capitalized on it. This says a lot about our relationship with mystery and tragedy in the digital age.
So whether you believe the official story or still have questions, one thing's for sure. The story of Elisa Lam is about more than her death. It's about a society that's drawn to the unexplained, a system that failed her, and an internet that made her famous in the worst way.
It's also a reminder to approach these cases with empathy. It's okay to ask questions, but we should never forget that behind every headline, every theory, every creepy video, there's a real person with a real life.
So after everything we've covered, we wanted to take a few minutes to just sit with it, because no matter what version of this story you believe, it's a hard one.
Yeah, I think it's important to say this outright. Elisa Lam was a real person. She was dealing with real mental health challenges. and while the setting and the details feel mysterious, the tragedy is very real. There's no happy ending here, just a young woman whose life was cut short.
I think what keeps pulling people in is how many loose ends there seem to be. It's that feeling of something's off, but when you sit with it long enough, you start to realize maybe the scariest part isn't that something paranormal happened. It's that nothing did. That this could happen to anyone in the wrong place at the wrong time without anyone noticing.
And for me, that's what sticks. The idea that someone in crisis slipped through the cracks. The hotel didn't have safeguards, the city didn't have a safety net. And even when her family tried to check in on her, it wasn't enough. That's not a conspiracy, it's a systemic failure.
It also speaks to how uncomfortable we are with mental illness. People are so quick to jump to ghosts and games and demons, but they hesitate to talk about things like psychosis or bipolar disorder. Sometimes the truth is harder to process than the fantasy.
Exactly. And the elevator footage. Yeah, it's creepy. But if that was someone you loved, wouldn't you want people to see it with compassion, not as a viral horror clip?
At the end of the day, this case reminds us why empathy matters. It's okay to be fascinated by a mystery, but don't forget the human at the heart of it. Elisa was a daughter, a student, a writer. She deserved safety. She deserved to be believed, and she deserved more than a water tank and a viral video.
Agreed. If you're listening right now, and you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please reach out for help. There is support out there, even if it doesn't always feel like it.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for sitting with us through a heavy one. If you've got thoughts, theories, or reactions, we'd love to hear them. Respectfully, of course. Leave us a comment down below.
We'll be back next week. Subscribe so you don't miss us. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and maybe avoid sketchy elevators for a while.
Or at least don't play button games in the middle of the night. We'll catch you next time.